was unable to do it himself because of his physical issues. And because of that, the report came in an odd way, and it came to me instead of to the city manager, who was not fully up to speed yet. And so I thought it was probably a good idea to lump the two together or send them on, because the one explained the other. But I have absolutely no problem, and nor would I have ever had a problem with making this report public. I think that it's written, it's matter of fact, it's not pointing a finger at anybody, and I think Councilwoman McKeithen said it very good. This is a report that I don't think anybody would be ashamed to see out in public.
Okay. Any other comments? I have a comment that I think that we did spend taxpayer dollars on it. We spent, got a special allocation of $2,000 to spend outside of our legal fees to do it. And it was requested in an open meeting that we do the review, so I think it might be pertinent if the rest of the council agrees that we show transparency on this behalf. So do we have a second on the motion?
I second.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question? Sure. That document had no name in it. It didn't say who it.
I know, I said that.
Yeah, okay.
I noted, no name, no title.
I think that whoever prepared that should sign it.
Could have.
No, I went through the whole thing, I couldn't find it.
Could have been signed. It was made as a working document for the city manager and the city attorney. We knew who did it, but it's a good point. It should have been on the title.
So why don't we have a motion with a second. All in favor of releasing the document that was prepared?
Plural.
The two documents that was prepared at the request of the council a number of months ago.
I'd say I was surprised that it came as a confidential document, and I haven't heard of it being made public. I would also like to say that if that the findings of this investigation or the report, we should do that for all of our committees and see how they've been operating also. So I think what's one committee has undergone in scrutiny, all of our committees should be scrutinized and researched and revealed as to how they're conducting. And I think that's what the city manager is trying to do, is to bring some consistency with our procedures. I think that the staff recommendations are very fair. I agree with all the staff recommendations in this, and I would like to have us hold a workshop where the public can come and we can talk through all of the committee structures and have the committee representatives come and talk to us also about their goals of the committees. I'm really pleased that the city manager has done what she's done in researching the committee structures and making the recommendations. And I'm really pleased that what began as I think a deliberate retaliatory act against a certain committee to try to uncover some kind of wrongdoing has resulted in a thorough review of our town's committees. So it's clear that all of our committees have don't have the proper guidance from the staff or from the town's administration, or the proper training or the proper protocol and for calling meetings and putting items on the agenda. So I feel very good about making it public, and I think I'm really very pleased with how this is all unfolding. So I feel very good.
Can I just say, I don't think the other committees are the same as the Environmental Programs Committee, because the Environmental Programs Committee could spend money, or did spend money. None of the other committees spend money, so they're totally different from that.
Well, the Arts Committee does have some money, but I understand. I think we've got two things going. Number one, I'm hopeful that there is no retaliatory activity going on, and I think we want to make sure that we're staying on a level playing field here with all of us. caution us on that. And I'd like to go ahead and have a vote now on this motion that has a second. So all in favor for releasing the Environmental Programs Committee reports?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Was there any nays?
No nays.
Okay.
And that brings me to my other point, and that is that I think we have to defer consideration of this committee and commission and rules and procedures. It's fine if we want to have an all-day session, but to the extent we're going to be discussing the reports and what happened, which is what we asked, that it come back to the council with a report, I think that should be for the next agenda item, that we consider these two reports and what we want to do with regard to that one committee on our April agenda, not at a special meeting.
Why don't we have some discussion on that, please?
Well, I was going to bring another point here. I would like for us to, tonight, to extend the terms of the committee members to the end of June, to allow to have time for some of these things to transpire. You know, in general, I think that defining the staff role with committees is a real good step forward, and I think that applies to all committees, not just one committee. And I think certainly the finance director's job, or the kinds of responsibilities that are outlined in here, make all kinds of sense. I would add also the finance director ought to be involved with, I don't know, the budget and internal audit or internal controls is spelled out here, but that certainly should be part of the finance director's responsibility as far as the committees are concerned. I agree that trying to tackle the operating rules and reviewing the committees tonight is, I don't think we're ready for that. I'd like to suggest that we let the committees, various committees know that we're going to be looking at this, and suggest that they may want to agendize and have a discussion within the committee itself in terms of mission and whatever we have in a document pertaining to that committee. So whatever form of discussion we decide on, a workshop or a council meeting or whatever, we have that input from committees, that they've thought it through. And so it's not just, you know, sitting down and throwing out ideas, but we get a reasoned response.
In reviewing this item, I have a sort of uncomfortable feeling. And I'm not sure, there are one or two areas there, but you know, our job as a council is to make the rules. And the employees of the town are there to implement the rules which are made by the council. And therefore, I think we want to be careful in some of the things that we've got here, that we don't try to make it look as if it's the staff that are making the decisions, not the council, on important items. I mean, you know, there's a lot of work for the staff to do. I think they've done a good job on a lot of things, but we have to remember that our job as a council is to set the rules and then ask our staff to implement.
I totally agree that we are policymakers, but that with staff's guidance, because they're the professionals, they're the ones that are on the ground doing the job, and they should be the liaison for us. I think that it is important that our resident volunteers who are doing committee work have the necessary tools to do the volunteer work that they're called to do. Last month, Mayor Widmer and I put our colleagues' memo to vote for the council to have staff put together ideas on creating a committee volunteers handbook that would be given, a digital electronic handbook that would be presented to all committee volunteers, that explain to them the scope of the responsibility of each committee they're on, the rules that they have to follow with which to sit on that committee, the regulations, guidelines for acting on behalf of the community, the committee, and explaining all the protocols for purchasing, using budget, council-approved budgets. And it hasn't been done. It's never been done. And so consequently, I think committees have just always done what has always been the way they do it, and that just doesn't make it right. They get advice from council or their staff, and that may be just the way it's always been done, always been handled. But if we are very clear through the finance director of the purchasing protocols, of the Brown Act protocols, then everybody has the same playbook. So I'm hopeful that that will come on an agenda in the near future. And I was thinking that maybe the reason it wasn't on this agenda is because we are looking at the committee structures the way the city manager has presented. So I think that we need to make it a very even playing field. We have to be consistent through all the committees throughout the town, which when researching and looking at them, there are many inconsistencies because of the way the committees have been run over the years.
And my comments are, very similar to everybody else's. First off, I think that I think each of the committees tries to do the right thing. In some cases, there's some variation in how things go. But of course, our volunteers are doing things for the best of the town. The constant in all of the committees is that there's, for the most part, I think there's one or two that don't have a council member, is that there's a council member on there. The council member who is on there, or council members who are on those committees, are accountable for the operation of those committees in accordance with the comments that Council Member Dobby pointed out. The council has to take some responsibility. If there's activities that are going on, the council member needs to own up to that. We do want to promote the idea of accountability here. And so I think that the council members need to understand that. And I think that the staff is augmenting, and staff is helping identify. So that's my comments with regards to the overall structure of where we were with the documentation that was put in front of us. I agree that our council, our committees need to continue on. There are some people that have indicated they'd like to get off the council, but for the committees. But for the most part, the majority of the people, I think, would be willing to continue to serve. And our committees, while they meet infrequently, once a month or once every 2 months, others more often, but I think we need to continue the town moving forward. So it's important that at a minimum that the council consider do the extension as been brought up by Council Member Carlson, and I agree with the idea of having the council chair or one of the committee members come before the council and discuss how their committees are working, and let them be present at the time when we're talking about their committees. But time is of the essence here. If we're just going to extend for a couple months, then we're going to have a jam-packed schedule. So we might want to have that as an ad hoc meeting or a special meeting. But I think the first motion was on the table was Councilmember Carlson saying let's extend by proclamation here the terms, and I'd like to second that and see if we can get a vote on that aspect of it before we continue any discussion on continuance, etc. So can we have a vote on?
Aye.
Okay.
To extend.
Right. Motion to extend. With regards to there was when I read this agreement, there was a discussion on let's make sure we've got the rules right. Let's make sure we've got outlines and an understanding of how all the committees work. And I think that the council colleagues letter that was put forth last month kind of got the ball rolling, plus some other activities in town got the ball rolling that brought this forward. If we're going to take more time, I would like, I echo Councilmember Lewis's suggestion that we perhaps just follow the instruction that we'd come up with in the colleagues letter, and at least let the council decide with staff's support of having documentation available for people so that they have the referral material without having to dig too hard. And so perhaps we could have that in a future agenda item, but I don't know how the rest of people feel on that, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, they already agreed.
Yes.
Right.
We need to do that.
Five is a
We just
5-0
need to-
vote,
yeah,
so I
right.
think we need to implement that.
Once the rules are actually redone, revised.
Then we'll have to update it.
finalize.
Mhm.
Right. But I think that right now, I think that there are only a few council committees that are spending money. They need to be briefed. And I think really some of that rests with us sitting up here to make sure that we're going to do the right thing, and we take that message to the committee meetings that we go there.
Could I just say something? I think the staff could play a very important role in making sure that we all are reminded from time to time about Brown Act and other, regulations we have to follow. And so from that aspect, I think if we have professional training for our staff so that they are able to do that, that would be a big plus, because it's just something we've got to do. We have to make sure that our committees and commissions are operating in the same kind of rules that we are on a consistent basis. The other thing that isn't addressed in here that's been kind of bothersome for me regarding committees is that, and this gets to where the fact that we don't have a lot of staff, is that there, from time to time, are some technical matters that need to be, where you like to have some expertise. And it may be that a staff member doesn't have that. So one idea was to try to line up the committees with the department, I think, to help perhaps provide that or be responsible for getting the resource that you need to have at a committee level if you do need to have some specialized. I'm thinking about, for example, high-speed or rail committee, in that when Duncan was here, he certainly had a lot of background experience in rail matters, and it's been very helpful. And Mike has been very helpful in coming in from time to time talking to the rail committee. But even then, I'm sure Mike would agree that there's probably some areas where we need to have some other expertise that maybe the department or so those are the kind of things that I'm hoping that we can improve on in terms of level of professionalism that for each of our committees.
So I guess there's a question of whether or not we would like to have a continuance on this, and then it would be helpful, I think, to city staff in structuring future agenda items as to how we would like to see these. So I think some of the recommendations in the staff report indicated maybe we should combine some things, maybe we could take some action on those. I'd like to have some discussion on that.
Could we have a workshop on this? I mean,
I'm happy to have a workshop on it.
I think it would be really helpful if we had a workshop on it, and had the representatives from key representatives, and we could structure it so that it's scheduled so that one committee is at a certain time, and then you would give each committee a certain amount of time throughout the day, and work through it. I think it's really important to do that.
We know how careful we are about sticking to schedules, so we know that's going to work. But I would say that I think maybe a good idea is to have it on a Saturday, so as many people who are involved with these committees have an opportunity to give their input.
That's an excellent idea.
So I would ask, one, for continuance of most of these matters with the exception of the extension of all committee and commission expiration dates. But with regard to that, I would ask that staff contact the committee and commission members and verify that they are willing to continue serving, because that wasn't what they signed up for. And then I would ask for continuance of all matters except for consideration of the EPC and the reports that are now going to be made public, which would be heard at on the next council agenda. And that the whatever the continuance is, it should be after the public has an opportunity to weigh in on those reports. Because without the input on those reports, we really don't have all the public input that I think we would want in order to make revisions to the committees.
How are we gonna make these public? Just put them on the website?
I think that's fine.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, you weren't suggesting that we would tonight tackle merging committees and that sort of thing, were you?
It just, unless anybody had any specific thing they wanted to tackle today.
No, I don't think we ought to.
That's why I just want to make sure that they're.
I agree with Council.
Right.
Member Keith, and I think that what she was saying was that we continue.
Okay.
One of the things, though, that needs to happen in a timely fashion before June 30th is that the notices need to go out, and potential committee members should be made aware that, and because that has to happen too, that by June 30th, we need to have, need to be able to have replacements of continued members. Indicated their
No, I agree. I think that one of the decisions that we need to meet with each of the committees and understand what they have, and staff has made some recommendations, and get the committee members' input. I wouldn't want to sign up for a committee to find out that next month it's been discontinued or merged, and I wonder where, do I have a seat on the new committee or not? So I think we need to move quickly with our workshop. I would recommend if we can schedule that very quickly. I like the idea of the Saturday. I think everybody seems to be in favor of that.
I don't think the workshop should be until we have a discussion of the EPC and those two reports, however. And that also gives people the opportunity to schedule coming to this workshop meeting on a Saturday. We were only talking 3-4 weeks away. And given our schedules, that's probably where we're going to end up anyway. So I would make a concerted effort to make sure we hear whatever comments there are on the reports, and then have the workshop, but still go ahead and schedule the workshop as quickly as possible so we have it on our calendars and so the public has foresight to put it on theirs.
All right, let's ask staff then to, why don't we have a motion then to ask staff to set up the workshop?
So I also move that we ask staff to make the EPC reports public on the website, and that we move to have council convene a public workshop at the earliest possible date after those reports are made public, preferably on a Saturday, including all the representatives of the various committees and commissions, and structure the meeting such that each committee has a time slot so they can come for that time slot, and hopefully we'll be able to keep that.
I'd like to amend that to say that we would not be having the workshop until after our next meeting, where the public has an opportunity to weigh in on the reports.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it. I mean, it's my motion with one name.
If you'll accept it, you don't have to.
I'll accept it.
Thank
All
you.
right, then let's have a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's after the
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
The next city council.
So with the continuance, we have public comments. Does this public have any comment on that? I apologize.
Mr. Mayor, just a matter of technicality, because we were like that. I think we really just tabled it because continuing to a date certain. So we just tabled it. We'll come back with an appropriate date.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay, then we'll move on then to item 24, which is now the topic I think many of you are here to discuss, which is possible startup of events bookings at Holbrook Palmer Park for the rest of the calendar year. This item was a request of a colleague's memo that had passage from the council in the previous meeting, where Vice Mayor Lewis had identified that perhaps our decision to stop activities for weddings was perhaps premature or had some unintended consequences, and that there were some activities that Atherton residents and other residents, not being discriminatory, might be willing to have that were smaller or whatever. And so we have this item for you to discuss with us.
I'm gonna hand this one off to Mike.
Yes, Mayor Whitmer, members of the City Council. The purpose of this item is to obtain City Council policy direction regarding the continuation of event bookings at Holbrook Palmer Park for the remainder of the 2012 calendar year. This is in response to direction staff received at your February council meeting to reopen discussion and receive policy direction regarding the rental of park for social events. To assist in this discussion, the staff report tried to define and distinguish between town events and other events. And for this discussion, town events were defined as events associated with official town business, which would include meetings or events associated with the City Council or any council-appointed advisory committee or commission, and of course meetings and events conducted by city staff. And those groups in particular are identified and shown on attachment 1 of your report. Attachment 2 of your report provides a list of groups and types of functions which staff would identify as other events. And as you can see, we categorize these events as weddings, social events, and meetings and classes, and have also identified specific events which have typically occurred in the park. And we did this to help clarify what we mean by these different categories. So attachment 2 is really the focus of this item. The goal of staff is to receive council direction regarding, number 1, which events you would like us to continue, and for those events, would you like to place a maximum group size on any of them? As stated in our staff report, recreational uses at the park, such as the Little League, lacrosse, soccer, tennis, are not part of this discussion. And unless otherwise directed by the council, these activities will continue as they always have in the past. For the events which the council decides to allow, since by definition they are not associated with official town business, staff has several recommendations as outlined in our report. These recommendations include that responsible parties fill out an event application which indicates the type, size, and length of the event, that town costs are recovered through fees and other appropriate charges, that the applicants provide proper insurance to limit the town's exposure to risk liability, and per the Association of Bay Area Governments recommendations, that all facility access and required setups are performed and controlled by authorized town staff. Our report also provides an estimate of revenues and expenses. Your staff report also includes an estimate of event revenues and expenses for the remainder of calendar year 2012. These revenues estimates were developed based upon previous year's revenue experience and factoring in the assumptions we've outlined on page 3 of your report. For expenses, we estimated costs associated with direct expenses related to the use of the park facilities for events. These costs are summarized in the table on page 4 of your report. I guess one of the things that I want to emphasize is that when we're in the section talking about revenues and inspections and revenues and expenditures, there are 2 words that we use quite a bit. One is assumptions and the other word is estimates. So our financial message here is that based upon, is that the revenue expenses that we've included in our report are based upon actual revenue and expense data for park events. And that they are based upon what, as your staff, we believe are prudent assumptions and estimates. So although our staff report indicates a potential net revenue of approximately $12,000, this should realistically be characterized as a financial push. Accordingly, staff believes the primary policy question here is whether or not the town should resume event bookings in the park. And if the answer is yes, then provide staff direction regarding which types of events and whether there should be any limitations on the size. And finally, our staff report omitted an item which was included in the colleagues' memo memo submitted by Mayor Whitmer and Vice Mayor Lewis at your last meeting. And this related to the recommendation of limiting the size of events at the pavilion, requiring tables and chairs to a maximum of 150 guests. So that concludes staff recommendation. We're happy to answer any of your questions. And then we do suggest that we really go to attachment 2 and focus and discuss that and get some direction. Thank you.
So, since one of the authors of the college memo was the Vice Mayor, why don't we start with you, if that's okay?
No, I'll let someone else.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions I'd like to address to Mike. First has to do with the revenue side, pricing. It seems to me that the pricing could be a key element here that we haven't talked about in any extent. One way to discourage large groups is to charge a higher price. One of the examples of this is the annual Easter egg hunt, where it used to be $5 per person, and now it's $10 per person. It was raised because there was such a large number of people that were coming to the event at the lower price, and that certainly has had some impact. So Mike, when it comes to the pricing, what sort of pricing model were you using?
Well, at this point, we're relying on the existing fees that that the town has already adopted, and in some situations where, for example, the Easter egg hunt, where staff knows that in order to properly staff it, there's going to be additional expenses, and so again, the thing there is that what we're striving for is cost recovery.
My second question has to do with expenses here. Labor for building ground maintenance enhanced. What does he mean by enhanced landscaping or changes in the grounds there?
What we mean there is that if we continue to have events at the pavilion, the main house, that it's going to require higher level maintenance. As an example, there was the Danes dance several weeks ago, as well as the Council of Cities event. And that required, prior to both those events, staff went out to make sure that things were well swept, that everything looked good. And so that's the higher level of cost that we're talking about.
So we wouldn't be doing that just for talent events, then?
Not as much.
Okay. Well, I just wondered, because I think previously when we had an events coordinator that there was a lot of effort put into planting flowers and things like that. But, and I think if we're going to rent it out at all, we ought to rent it as is, and whoever rents it wants to bring flowers or something, that's fine. I'll have more comments later on, but those are my 2 questions.
I think it's important as we look at this issue to remember that the colleagues memo addressed something that's very important. For 3 months we considered large events and weddings at the park, large corporate events and weddings at the park, and after much discussion we determined that they were no longer to continue. The colleagues memo recognizes that in discontinuing those events we may have gone too far, but it does not say that we are going to re-raise the question of whether or not we're going to hold weddings or large corporate events at the park. It specifically says, while the discussion was predominantly focused around large corporate events and weddings, the decision was to eliminate all rentals at the park. That is not what I believe is here today, and it's not what I approved last month. What we're here to look at is the oversight, the practical effect of having taken that action, which is not an action we're questioning or reversing or intending to even consider tonight, but rather the oversight in that things like memorial events were also swept up in this action, and that memorial events and special things like a bridal shower or a birthday party might be something that we would want to continue on behalf of the community. But we are not here to reconsider our actions taken generally during those 3 months, and finalized, I guess it was in December.
I don't read that here. I didn't read that into this.
That's when I approved it a month ago.
I don't know what you were thinking when you approved it, because.
Well, that's what it says. And it refers to a memorial event. I'm reading right through.
No, I'm looking at the staff report here.
I'm looking at the colleagues memo, which is what we acted on.
The colleagues memo is
But what we have before us tonight to consider is the staff report.
Which should not go beyond the colleagues memo, which is all we directed them to look at.
Well, Mr. Mayor, under the heading of the doctrine of unintended consequences, if Councilmember McKeeson is correct, then you may not have an Easter egg hunt in the park, because those have been prohibited by the city council action. And the staff is coming to you saying, we're not sure that maybe that you intended all these things, but you need to understand that no event means no event. And there's no legal justification between a non-city event of one kind and a non-city event of another. We have to be very careful that we don't get ourselves into a legal pickle.
We talked about corporate events. The Atherton Dames Easter egg hunt is not a corporate event.
And if an association, there are lots of things out there that aren't corporations that can have large events, and that's a distinction without a difference.
And I think we voted not to have those, but none of these others, graduation ceremonies or school picnics or bar mitzvahs, are not the sort of things that I would consider a large corporate event or a wedding, which is.
Well, I think staff was just asking, they were giving us a list, if I could step in. I believe the staff was saying, here's the whole universe of what's there, what intersects